This is a section we call Unpacking How It Is. That's what most of today is going to be about, certainly this morning. We're looking at the built-in, inescapable traps of the thing, that no matter what we do to struggle to try to get out of it, there is a kind of...
but it's kind of a matrix.
There's a matrix of, it's a hall of mirrors, really, and it's a set of traps, and the purpose of this is not to bum you out.
It's actually the opposite.
It's actually the opposite.
The purpose of this is to get you to see that a lot of the things that you take personally
Are structural.
Either as the child or as the parent, and a lot of the things you feel either resentful about towards the other, or you feel guilty about, they're not personal to you. They're kind of, in this culture, they're kind of invisibly built into the institutionality of parent-child relationships. So if you can recognize them, but not make them personal, like it's not about you, it's not that you screwed up or that you were screwed over uniquely. We're not saying that you shouldn't have your emotions. You should have your emotions, because they're real. It's not that you should have them, you have them. And we're not trying to dismiss them. But at the same time, for you to recognize that there's something in this culture that's kind of structural and invisible. When we're so used to something, we're so close to it, we don't even distinguish it. And that's what we're talking about here.
Yeah, but it's a dual thing, because once you can not take it personally, then you can take a personal look at how does that show up for me? Because it is not personal. It didn't start with you. You didn't invent it, but you have your own personal version of it. And until you can see your own personal version of it while not taking it personally, you won't be able to get free of it. So both things are necessary, but first we need to set the table for just how challenging this is, so that you can then have a chance of looking at your own personal situation and analyzing it with a bit of remove. So, no other relationship has an origin story as momentous or emotional. So just think about some other relationship in your life. Let's just take, say, the person you end up with long-term, a spouse or a long-term partner or something like that. What's the origin story of that? Well, a friend set us up. Thought, hey, you're single, let's, or it was a blind date, or we met on an app. We got to the restaurant, we sat down, we said, hi, how's it going? We talked a little bit about the weather, things moved on. Now, maybe that night ended in passionate cries of love and deep eye contact and whatever, but it wasn't necessarily going to go that way. And it doesn't go that way for everybody. And usually if it goes that way right away, there's going to be people being like, oh, it was maybe a little too quick. Maybe we should have slowed down a bit. That's the most extreme case of a very quick falling in love origin story. And you don't know if it's going to last long term. Now think about the relationship between a parent and an adult child. How did that relationship start? It started, in terms of the moment they met, I'm not even talking about the conception, we'll get to that in a second, with one person, in fact, both people going through a major state change, an irrevocable, no going back, point of no return state change as a consequence of meeting each other.
There's no, if we don't like each other, we won't meet again.
Yeah.
Yeah,
you don't be like, well, are we gonna have a second date? Maybe we just wanna be friends. Because that would be nice. If you could be born, check out the chemistry, and be like, you know what? Why don't we just be neighbors? Maybe you could be my hockey coach in a few years. It's not like that. The first meeting is full of effusive cries of pain, joy, love. Also, it's full of bodily fluids. It's full of skin contact and eye contact. And in the process, one person goes from being an intrauterine sea creature to suddenly being a human being, something they've never been before, and they have no idea even what it is. And another person goes from either not being a parent to being a parent, or being the parent of a brand new life, which is always a brand new experience. So just that's how it started for the two of you.
And just think back, those are your parents to that moment, you know. When Dan was born, it remains he's our first child. And
Also their best. Never quite got that good again.
you're never as good as you were the moment you were born, let me tell you.
That's true.
It was just the most joyful moment of my life. I just wept with joy, you know. This little sea creature with blue hands and blue feet, and yeah. And you know, it's been downhill ever since, you know. So here we are, you know, 48 years later. So yeah, it's a unique moment.
48 years later, your parents are pining for the time when you had no circulation to your limbs. And you couldn't form a sentence or control your bowels.
Yeah.
Sorry to disappoint you.
And that's the other thing is, you know, that there's a powerful drive. There's a drive in our brain. There's a circuit in our brain designed to care for others. I mean, without that, all mammals have that. Without, the mammalian child just doesn't survive. And it's a powerful circuit, because literally, in what other relationship would you put up with so much shit? I mean, literally, you put up with a lot of shit when you're a parent, you know? No, you put up, you clean it, and you know. So there's this powerful drive. And then something happens that, from that initial joy and absolute devotion to care and to nurture, here we are, decades later, with all these complications. You know, there's no other relationship quite like that. Yeah. And as Dan was saying, every other relationship is really, to a certain degree, a matter of choice. This one is not.
At the beginning.
You know, at the beginning, you did not choose the child you're going to get. You did not choose the parents you're going to have.
You didn't even choose to be conceived.
You didn't choose when you're going to be born, you know.
No other adult relationship is the product of such radical change. So again, let's say you met your best friend in kindergarten, and now you meet up with them and go out for dinner. Well, the two of you couldn't look more different now than you did then, right? Clearly, a massive transformation has taken place, but you've grown at roughly the same pace. When you were 6, you were 6. When you were 8, you were 8. When you were 18, you were 18, and now you're both this age. A lot of change. Let's take a look at the relationship between the parent and the adult child. Who was he when I was born? He was about a 30-year-old medical student. Were you a medical student by then?
In your case, 32 years old.
32, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, medical student, grown, beard, same voice, roughly. But not the person I'm seeing here. Who was I when he met me? I was a little blob of protoplasm. I didn't have a sense of me. There was no me. And then radically over time that changed. And by the time I'm a toddler, I'm bipedal like him. I'm walking around. Now we have that in common.
Well, actually, it calls me to say something here. Eckhart Tolle, the spiritual teacher, some of you know, who lives in Vancouver as well, by the way, he says something about this, that there's a profound inequality on the level of form, which Daniel was just talking about. I mean, think about it. At the moment of conception, the child is one cell. One cell.
How many billion cells does an adult
The
have?
adult is 37 trillion cells. Talk about inequality. So, and you know, even when the child emerges from the womb, I mean, it's just, you know, as John just described, that's on the level of form. And the problem for most of us in this culture is that we function only on the level of form. Now, there's a deeper level that spiritual teachers recognize, the level of being, which is of existence. On the level of being, there is no inequality. And this society is so form-based that we're not aware of that being level. So that inequality, which masks really on a level of being. Now, if the parents could see the child on a level of being of a human creature in its own right, and it's there'd be less of a problem.
Yeah.
But we don't.
Yeah.
We look at it on a level of form. What gender, what does it look like? How does it behave? We're not seeing the beingness of the child. I don't even know if those words mean anything to you. Do they? Because being is such a vague, or at least difficult to define concept.
I would even say, though, that even on that level, and I think that's very true, there's still an inequality in being. A child is doing what? They're coming into being. That's the expression. We're developing, being has different qualities to it, including awareness, perception, all that kind of stuff. So that the seed of a person's human essence is there from birth, but that being has had a chance to develop and expand in the parent, and the child, it's still very nascent. The point is good. I'm just saying that even then, parents are veterans of being, and children's are initiates of it, unless you believe in souls and past lives and all that kind of stuff.
So let's just notice that difference, that's all.
Yeah.
Okay.
And lastly, and yet, certain things are set in stone. You can't reverse roles in this relationship. Like a bus driver and a bus passenger, theoretically, the bus driver could quit and become a passenger, and the bus passenger could learn to drive a bus, and they could switch roles, right? This relationship will always have, even if I caretake you,
that's what
in the end of life. That's included in this.
Yeah.
Even if I caretake you in the end of life, I am not parenting you. I am not in the role of bringing you along, educating you, being the more experienced one. You will always be the one who came first, the one who was here first, the one who's from a past generation.
Yeah, that's true.
That's all. And that's just, again, that's a built-in thing. And you can't break up. You can be estranged, but there are ex-husbands and there are ex-wives. There are no ex-sons and ex-daughters and ex-mothers and ex-fathers. You're always that person's mother.
Yeah.
And if they're dead, they're still your mother. They're still your father. They're still your daughter. They're still your son. You can't annul it. You can't break up. There's some certain things about it that are set in stone, even though you have choices you can make about how you're going to relate to that mandatoriness now as grown-ups.
Yep.
Make sense? So we've already said what to do with all that. Rather than interpreting all of the above as reason for discouragement, consider the following. If you're going to do something challenging, it helps to have a realistic view of the built-in difficulties so you can come prepared. Keep your expectations in check, not be thrown or take it personally when things go sideways, to foster kindness and compassion and so on. Knowing what you're up against is empowering. And realizing that working on this relationship as a choice allows you to actively choose to do it or not, and to be responsible for your choice. There is no have to or should here. Choosing freely is liberating.
Which is also practical advice for this workshop.
That's right.
Like at every moment, you're making a choice to address something, not to address something, to deal with an issue with you and the other, or not address it. Be aware of the choice that you're making, because you don't have to do any of it. You don't have to say anything. You don't have to move closer to the other. You don't have to work at it. You don't have to do anything. So when you're doing it, it's a choice that you're making. And so be aware of making choices. So making choices needs to be built into the conscious choices, needs to be built into the future of this relationship. So whereas you didn't have choices before, or whereas a lot of the time you behaved automatically, make the effort not to be conscious every time you make a decision or say something or undertake an action. Be aware of the choice. There's a neuroscientist at Stanford. His name is Robert Sapolsky.
A neuroscientist?
Yeah, and a neurobiologist. He wrote a book recently called Determined. And he argues that basically there's no free choice. There's absolutely no free choice because we're so programmed by our previous experiences that literally we have no free choice at all. And he says that we're nothing more or less than a sum of that which we could not control, our biology, environments, their interactions. So he says there's no such thing as free will, because it's all determined. Now, that's true about 99.99% of the time. So we have far less free will than we think we do, because if we're not conscious and aware of what shaped us and what's motivating us, how free are we?
I'll read this slide and then I'll give you sort of a cardinal example of a working theory. So the working theory you have is your view of them that you don't even realize is a view. Whether you realize it or not, you have a view of the other person. You don't actually see them as they are. You see who your view says they are. It's like a working theory you've never even examined. It doesn't seem like a theory to you. You don't act like it's a view, you act like it's reality because to you, it is. And your working theory comes with an automatic way of dealing or coping with the version of them you're seeing. Believing is seeing. In other words, what you already believe about them dictates what you're expecting, how you see them, how you prepare for them to show up, and then you act that way, and then they just confirm it for you.
And then anything they do then confirms your theory.
Exactly.
And we're seeing this acted out all the time in the realm of politics.
Right.
I'm not going to go there now, but that's what we're seeing. Which also means, and this is true of any relationship, like any spousal relationship, for example, there's at least 4 people present in the relationship. Let's say between my wife Ray and I, there's myself, there's Ray. Then there's who I think Ray is, and what I expect her to do, and why she's doing what she's doing. Then there's who she thinks I am, and her assumptions about my motivations and my, and my behavior and so on. So there's at least 4 people there. No wonder it's hard to get along, It's the same in this parent-child relationship. There's at least 4 people there. There's who you actually are, there's who the actual other is, then there's who you believe the other is, and who the other believes you are. And sometimes the real people are not even there. It's just the other two arguing with each other.
So just to illustrate this, I want to I tell this story to every single one of my mental chiropractic clients the first time I walk with them, because I think it's a fun illustration of what a working theory looks like. This is not from a parent-adult-child relationship, but it's sort of a perfect illustration of how a working theory works and how it dominates and creates a person's experience of somebody else. So anyway, I was taking a walk with this very, very good friend of mine, and my friend is an academic, a very accomplished academic in the humanities. I won't specify the exact field. Very accomplished in his field, very well respected nationally and internationally. But what my friend takes as much or more pride in than in his sort of worldly accomplishments is the fact that he's managed to foster on campus, in his department, an atmosphere of collegiality, community, cooperation, collaboration, as opposed to competitiveness, backbiting, ego, backstabbing, all that kind of stuff. And if you know anything about academia, you know that my friend was kind of swimming upstream to create this kind of an environment. Academics are not generally very warm with each other or very vulnerable or mutually supportive, generally speaking. So what that tells you is he's worked with a lot of difficult personalities over the years, and he can handle it, which is why this particular situation he was in, which is what he wanted to talk to me about, was so perplexing to him, because he had this one colleague who was just driving him up a wall. So we took this walk, and I said, okay, what's your intention for this walk? And he said, okay, well, I'd like to be free of this person. And I said, well, hold on, I can't make you free of her, but maybe free with her or free around her. He said, okay, no, my intention is freedom. Great, let's go looking for freedom. What's the problem? I said. He said, well, look, on paper, she was a good hire. The university was totally right to bring her aboard, good scholarship, decent professor, maybe not the highest marks from her students I've ever seen, but she's perfectly qualified. But interpersonally, she's just a complete nightmare. Every meeting she's in, she's doing anything but paying attention, especially when I'm talking. Pretty sure she's talking behind my back. When I try to approach her in private to try and invite her to subcommittees or get her involved in activities or this and that, I just get the coldest shoulder. I feel like she'd rather be anywhere but in a room listening to me. And to make matters worse, she's just joined the same health club as my wife. And my wife comes home from the sauna saying, I don't know what your problem is. This woman seems perfectly lovely to me. So now I'm facing this nightmare scenario, he says, of maybe one day I come home and she's been invited for dinner, or we go out to some social event and I have to make nice with my wife and her husband or whatever, knowing full well that the very next day on campus the Cold War will start again. And I can't sleep at night and I don't recognize myself. Can you help me? And the first question out of my mouth without any preparation was, okay, let's see, what's your working theory about why this is so hard for you? And he looked at me, he said, Daniel, if I knew that, I wouldn't be talking to you. I said, okay, well, fair enough. Let me see if I can put it a different way. I said, what's your working theory about like the best case scenario here? Like what would need to happen in order for this to resolve itself? Because if I know how your mind would craft a solution, like what you think the answer is, then we'll get some insight into what you think the problem is. And my contention is the reason you're stuck is because of the way you're looking at the problem. So let's see if we can figure out, kind of reverse engineer that. So what would need to happen? What's the best case scenario? And he thought about that for a second, or a good minute actually. And then he said, okay, Daniel, I guess it's like this. I think best case scenario, if this woman just didn't exist, I think that'd be pretty good. I said, come again? He said, yeah, you know, if she just wasn't there at all, and like maybe never had been, I think I could live with that. I think that'd be really good. I think I'd be on board for that. And he sort of laughed at himself. He said, I guess that's kind of a silly answer, right? I said, it's not silly at all. It's brilliant. You've just, by George, he's got it. Like you've just cracked the code. He said, what do you mean? How do you figure? I said, well, look, you've just identified what your working theory is, which explains exactly why you feel the way you do. Your working theory goes like this. Unless and until you get up the gumption to do something highly uncharacteristic of you, like hire a contract killer, or maybe this would take some doing, but it would definitely do the trick. You find yourself a time machine. You go back in time and you pull a reverse back to the future and prevent your parents from ever meeting. But unless one of those things happens, which don't really look likely at this point, according to your working theory, you're stuck with this bitch. And your life is going to be miserable, shrieking hell for the rest of your career, and all of your work will be for naught. And he looked at me with a straight face. He said, yeah, pretty much. And then he had a good laugh. Now, what didn't happen, just because he had a good laugh, was that all of a sudden tears of loving kindness rolled down his cheeks, and he realized, oh my God, she's just a wonderful person. I should have compassion. Probably she's just as traumatized as me. And, you know, he goes to school the next day and makes friends with her. No, he still didn't like her very much. But something cracked open in him. One minute he went from just being certain that this woman's mere existence was an affront to reality, that it shouldn't be. And in the next moment he realized, wait a minute, somehow of all the available working theories and explanations on the market, I ended up, without ever having chosen this one, with this one, which is the most upsetting, least free one imaginable. And I've been stuck inside of it. And that's all that's been available to me. And the minute he saw that, he was able to start to consider other possibilities he couldn't have seen even 30 seconds before. And half an hour later, we had had a breakthrough and whatever. And I spoke to him a few months ago and I said, do you know that I tell this story to everybody I walk with? He said, you know what's crazy, Daniel? I haven't thought about that working relationship in years. We still work together. She's just not an issue for me anymore. She just is who she is. I don't even know if I like her or don't like her. It's just a fact of my life. It's not a problem. So that was the hinge point, the realizing that something that he had taken just to be bedrock reality was just a working theory, that somehow I cannot live in proximity to this woman's existence without feeling the way I feel.
But in that story, though, to make it apropos here, he must have had a working theory of the other person.
Yeah.
Which is what, that she's impossible? Or?
That she's impossible, that she's cruel,
yeah.
That she's trying to make him feel the way he actually felt.
Exactly. So that's the working theory of the other person.
That would be the working theory about the other person. That's very good. I'm glad you said that.
Yeah.
Because to make it more specific, his view of her was that she was a diabolical sadist who arrived basically to make his life miserable and kind of enjoyed it. And when he let go of that, his experience of her shifted entirely. So what we're suggesting to you is that in this relationship with this person you think you know very, very well, a big part of the things you know are in fact not really knowledge or facts, but a working theory that you've cobbled together over the years. And now when you look at them through the lens of that point of view.
And particularly, there's a phrase in psychology called intentional thinking, which is when you think you know the intentions of the other person.
That's right.
And in a relationship, there's always that, you're doing this too. You have no idea why they're doing it. Like, you know, my kid is trying to get a rise out of me. You don't know that. He's pushing the limits. You know, he's testing the limits. For example, when it comes to children, he's testing the limits means that he wants to find out how bad he can be. So he's pushing it and pushing it and pushing it. Well, maybe he's trying to test how loved he is. You know, that if I behave this way, will they still love me? But the fact is, you don't know the intentions of the other person. So in a working theory or the other, there's usually a sense of you think you know why they're behaving the way they're behaving.
That's right.
Or that how they're behaving is somehow intentional, and that intention has to do with you.
Or that their behavior necessarily results in the exact way that you feel. That somehow there's a cause and effect. That because they do this, that is causing you to feel X, Y, Z.
Which is incidentally true when you're a child.
That's right.
So that how the parents behave will make the child feel a certain way. When the child behaves a certain way and the parents feels a certain way, that's already not so direct. Although I used to think so. Sorry.
It's okay.
I'm apologizing.
Yeah, that's all right. It's all right. So before we do a dyad, are there any questions about this or ideas or thoughts? Look in any relationship in your life. How do you see working theories working?
In other words, what do I believe about the other person?
What must I believe about the other person as a way of explaining why they are the way they are or why our relationship is the way our relationship is? Does anyone want to take just a first cut at it? You don't have to, there is no right answer. You don't have to nail it. We just want to get some stuff on the table so we can play with it. Hi.
Hi.
What's your name?
My name is Tiffany.
Hi, Tiffany.
I guess I'm one of those people that doesn't really know what to say or what to ask because it's such an overwhelming feeling for me to be here. And I think, one of the first things that I just want to do is just break down and cry.
Okay, can you stop there for a second? Yeah. There's a working theory there, which is that there's something wrong if I break down and cry. And what is wrong? What is the belief of what is wrong if that should happen? By the way, break down is itself already a judgment. Yeah. So what is the working theory as to what's wrong with, say, crying and becoming emotional?
Yeah, thank you. I don't want to hurt my mom.
Is your mom here?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, okay. I'm glad you don't want to hurt your mom. Can I ask your mom a question? Is that okay? Yeah. Do you give permission for Tiffany to express whatever is in her? Can you handle it? It might be difficult for you, but you're open to hearing it?
Yeah.
And can you do so? And if you have any hurt feelings, which may happen, I don't know, can you handle them?
Yes.
And if you can't handle them, can you ask us for support?
Yes.
Okay. Do you hear all that? Okay. Yeah. So, please carry on.
Yeah.
And by the way, let me just say something else. Your mom experiencing pain doesn't mean that you're hurting her.
Yeah.
Okay, it's not the same.
And that itself is a working theory. I hurt my mom.
That's already yeah.
My pain hurts my mom.
Yeah.
Or my truth hurts my mom.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, please carry on.
Yeah, I guess that's one of the things is my truth and how this working theory is, and my mom seeing me for who I am and for me to see her for who she is, because I don't really know who my mom is, and my mom doesn't know who I am. Yeah.
You each have blind spots about each other.
Yes.
Is it okay to admit that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Blind spots are just about the most human thing there is. Thank you for saying that, because it actually expands what this slide should say. You don't just have a working theory about the other, you have a working theory about yourself too, in the relationship. And either one or both can really affect the way the relationship goes. So besides the one we've already named, which is, I better be careful how I express how I feel, or even what I feel, because what I feel has the power to hurt my mother.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's a working theory that says my mom is too fragile to handle my reality.
So that's the working theory about her.
Okay, no. Is that not making it right or wrong, and surely you have good reasons for believing in that. We weren't born with that belief, so stuff happened, okay? But in the present moment, theoretically at least, which is more respectful towards your mom, she's strong enough to handle my reality, or she's not strong enough, she's too fragile to handle my reality? Which is more?
She's strong enough.
Yeah. Okay, good, thank you.
And it just so happens to be that's also the one that's more generous towards you. Yeah.
Anything else on that?
No, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Now notice what we said here on the slide, that your working theory comes with an automatic way of dealing or coping with the version of them and the version of yourself that you're seeing through your working theory. So for Tiffany, what's the automatic way of dealing with the fragile, can't handle my emotions mother she's convinced she has? What's the automatic, if that's the case, if this woman is just paper thin and will break down the minute Tiffany has a genuine human emotion that isn't hers, then what's the appropriate way of handling her inside that working theory? Any ideas? Stifling your emotions. Who else? Suppressing. Don't speak, right?
Distancing.
Distancing. Keeping things nice and superficial, right? Walking on eggshells, all of that. Distance, right? The working theory has a perfect internal logic to it. Inside of its own logic, it's completely and totally coherent and consistent. Only problem is, it's never really cross-checked itself with external reality because it's based in the past, right? So all of a sudden, when you realize something's a working theory, you realize, oh, if I gave that up, I would also have to give up my automatic ways of coping with it, but it also might open up a whole new possibility, which I'm seeing dawning on you.
In other words, what you're asking is, how well is this working theory working
That's right.
in the present moment?
And the truth is, it's totally not working, and it's totally working. You always win the game you're playing. And it's gotten you up to this point, it has survival value. The problem is, when you cross-check it against the intentions you brought to this workshop, it's incompatible with them. It's going to need to be taken out to the back of the shed and it's old Yeller time.
So notice we're still talking about your relationship to the relationship.
That's right. Who you think you're seeing, who you think you're dealing with.
Yeah.
It's like, if my dad said to me, who do you think I am? Well, that could be a really good question for me to ask. Who do I think you are?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Well, no, wait a minute now. That depends on how I ask it.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
But if I was being very generous, I could say, you know what? Inside of that grandiose, rhetorical gotcha question, Dad might be asking a very good question, which is, who do I think he is right now? I must be thinking he is, it's in my working theory about him. This is what we should exchange our working theories about each other before we go into the dyads.
Would you like to?
I think we should, or we should try.
You don't want to know.
I already do know. In fact, your other person probably knows what your working theory is of them because you treat them as if it's true. They're the recipient of it. The evidence of your working theory is in how you look at them, speak to them, don't speak to them, all of that. So my working theory to you has something to do with my dad loves the entire world and cares about the entire world and will heal the entire world, but he doesn't, frankly, just care enough to change his behavior around me. Or he, some kind of, it casts you as some sort of Deepak Chopra's son had made that documentary about him trying to expose his father as a hypocrite and an emperor with no clothes. Maybe that's a maybe that's a working theory, that only I see the true Gabor Maté, and you're uniquely cruel to me, or something like that.
Okay, if somebody's got something to say about that, just grab the mic and tell us how it struck you. Okay, when Daniel said that.
He's saying that he loves the whole world and everything else, but it seems like he has this unique feeling towards me, It seems like my dad's kind of the same way. I see him like talking to everybody, and everyone seems to enjoy his presence, And then there's like him with me. It's like I wish he would have known how he was with me,
Yeah.
Huh.
So it's I find that funny, but I don't know. I'm just also having a lot of other thoughts in my head about like how genuine he would be without the cameras here,
Yeah.
And that's what I want to see how, or that's what I've been thinking. I don't know what else to say, but
Right.
it's I've had a lot of stuff I've been thinking about the last few days actually. So
Thank you.
yeah.
Thank you. So that working theory sounds like what yours and mine have in common is only I know the real him.
This is the emperor has no clothes.
The emperor has no clothes. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. Somebody else? Yeah.
I feel like I'm on a truth spree today. Sagittarius season or something. I wanted to come to your defense. Yeah, like it really, my heart was kind of pounding and I almost said something. I'm notorious for kind of like doing that, and I didn't. And the way that you worked through it and the way that you're exemplifying real time how to work through these very real human blind spots, as you said, so human, is super illuminating and empowering. But yeah, I felt like defensive for you.
Yeah.
And wanted to come to your defense openly, but I still hadn't really opened up to the space yet.
Yeah.
And one more thing that I'll share, because I know I keep bringing my sister up, but she feels the same way. I do a lot of work with women, sisterhood circles, community circles. I pour a lot of love into a lot of women and call them my sisters, but she doesn't feel like I do that with her. So she's like, all these other women are your sisters and I'm your one sister.
Yep.
And we've got the most fractured relationship. So there's a lot of compassion coming through as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very good. Thank you.
Thanks.
Maybe one more. Yeah. Sure.
Yeah, my daughter has said that exact same sentence. And because I'm a life coach, and she's just like, no coaching here. And you can coach everybody else, but no, you got to be this and that. And I'm like, well, I'm trying to. So seeing that it's pretty prevalent. I don't know, is a disease going around or what, but that's why I came here, because I was just like, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm trying to just be me, and that don't seem to be okay. And what I'm learning is this whole working theory. Neither one of us will ever know who the other person is unless we find a way to step out of it.
Yeah.
I came here thinking, okay, I'm going to step out of it because, I just can't stand to live this way anymore. Yeah. And so that's what I'm hoping that I'm like, not to put y'all on the spot, but like, give me some tips. Like, how do I step out of it? Like, I've been trying.
Yeah.
Well, the first thing is to notice it. What we want to do is take the trap apart. So we have to realize the mechanics of the trap. Okay, so one mechanic is this working theory. So just notice that you have it about her. No, she's not here.
No, but I've heard her say that.
Yeah.
And what's your working theory about her?
What's your theory
My
about
working
her?
theory about her?
What kind of daughter would say something like that?
I've probably walked around thinking, oh, you want this. You like this. You're enjoying this.
Yeah, okay.
Very good.
But then rationally, I know she's not enjoying
Never
this.
mind rationally. Rationally is not running the show.
Yeah.
See, your working theory is impervious to external logic and reason. It's brilliant what you just admitted. Oh, you're liking this, you're enjoying it. That's who you're being when you react to her that way. What you know makes no difference in that moment.
Yeah.
What we want to do is to bring your better knowledge, your better wisdom to bear, but first we have to get this working theory out of the way.
And what possibility would open up for you if you dropped that she's enjoying this, that she wants this, what would open up for you?
Just to really see whatever it is.
Yeah, and be curious about it.
Yeah.
Okay, so the working theory preempts curiosity.
It's a literal foregone conclusion.
You know.
So you're saying it doesn't allow you to be curious?
Doesn't allow you to be curious, no, because you already know. You know. Okay, that's great. Thank you.
Now, I just to put a bow on this thing that happened early this morning, because I know it was activating. I could feel it in the room. I knew I was doing it. I also was like, I don't know what else to do right now. As always happens when I act out on stage, it's in reaction to a perceived threat or a perceived slight. It's been happening since the first time we did this, back in 2016. And there's always a common theme, and it's my working theory when I'm working with you that tends to come up, which is that you are trying to undermine me. So what had just happened was that you pulled out a quote from Robert Sapolsky about there being 99% no free will, and then you tied it back to the incident I'd referred to from a couple of weeks ago where we had a breakthrough where I made some new choices and whatever, and you spoke about how in that moment you had no choice. Now I interpreted that a certain way in that moment, that you're trying to basically say, there's nothing you could have done. You're trying to get out of it. And you don't need to defend that right now, because I get that's not what you were saying. I actually get that's not what you were saying. But in that moment, my working theory kicked in, which is that my dad actually doesn't want me to grow. He doesn't want me to be powerful. He doesn't want me to have choice. He wants to live. He wants me to live in a world where trauma is everything. And everything's predetermined. He's trying to hold me back. And I reacted as if that was true about him. And I was looking for agreement. Which is what we do.
So that's your working theory about me.
That's one working theory about you. And I have so much evidence that it's not true. Ample, but in that moment, all I can see is the evidence. It's a hammer that can only see a nail.
Well,
do you have any about me that you want to share?
There's two that came up for me. One is that you'll never forgive me. You'll never let me off the hook. Doesn't matter how much work together we do together. Doesn't matter how much time I acknowledge you, celebrate your work, value your contributions, respect you, even acknowledging your brilliance that I don't even aspire to. You know, you're never gonna let me off the hook of that somehow I'm limiting you and controlling you. And
because I'm what?
Well, I don't know, because I haven't thought through because of what, but you're attached to something that you won't let go of.
Okay, so I'm stubborn, I'm attached.
Yeah. So that's one thing. And the other thing has to do with, for which there's less and less evidence, and more counter evidence, is that you will not take responsibility for yourself in this relationship. You know. So those are
that's an oldie but a goodie.
Yeah. Those are the two working theories that I feel going.
Yeah, and what's interesting when you just listed them, my experience of you in describing them was that the second one I could tell you had fully stepped outside and could see. Right. When you were describing the first one, I couldn't tell if you were still inside it or not, and you don't need to answer that. But working theories have an emotional life of their own. You know, and I know that clearly we're describing an incident this morning where it's understandable that would have been triggered. Right?
So if we just quit it?
I don't know. I feel like we've come this far. We might as well drive over the cliff. So you can see that even for us, seeing our working theories is a tricky thing. So we're not asking you to nail it on the first try. So this is a juicy one. So love to hear from anyone, including people, especially people we haven't been hearing from much. What came up in this dyad? And maybe you sort of have a working theory about what your working theory is. Let's hear it. Let's work with it. Let's tease it out. Who'd like to share?
I was thinking, I think it's with like what my working theory is about my dad is that he's done so much now in the present to try to escape his past. and that he has no acceptance of it yet. So that he can't accept that what he was beforehand. 'Cause like I was thinking to myself that I've had conversations with him that feel genuine, but I don't think I ever had a conversation with him that was genuine about how he dealt with his addiction when he was my age.
Mm-hmm.
And which I deal with my own addictions too. And it would be nice to know how you handled it at my age instead of being just a therapist. Are you okay? How are you doing?
So he hasn't shared with you his experience.
I don't think he has. I can't remember a conversation being like that.
Okay, so this is just before we take ask you some more questions. Just want to affirm something. This is a very real thing, and I've experienced this, and I've told you this, particularly with parents who are advice givers, and who are worried and who have guilt, and they want to check in on you, all this kind of stuff. The most nutritious thing for me from my parents that I've gotten less than I would have liked is them just sharing about their lives with me. Not telling me how I should be, but guidance, example, experience, I've been there too, that kind of thing. And that's a very real sort of longing for a son to have from a father. Yeah. And that's a vulnerable thing for a father to give to a son. And many fathers, through all kinds of mechanisms and dynamics, aren't able to show up that way. And it can leave a real hunger there. So I want to ask you though, your working theory as you just phrased it sounds pretty innocuous. My dad hasn't really yet dealt with his stuff and so on and so forth. Now, how do you actually feel about the fact that your father doesn't connect with you in that way?
In other words, to rephrase it a bit, if I may, Daniel.
Yeah.
What is your working theory about your father vis-a-vis yourself? Not about him or in general, but what's your working theory? Like, when I was talking about my working theory with Daniel, he doesn't let me off the hook, okay? And Daniel's working theory about me had to do with him. So what is your working theory about your dad towards as he shows up towards yourself?
I think he wants to think that it's like he sees a lot of himself in me, so it's like he doesn't want to or like, and I think it comes off as like it's especially because now it's like he's sober and all that stuff, so it's like maybe it comes off as like I know better now, even though it's like you kind of dealt with the same thing, didn't you?
What do you believe? What do you believe his attitude towards you is?
It's still the same thing where it's like I'm the client,
Okay.
Yeah.
So my father doesn't see me as I am, as his son.
Yeah.
He sees me as a client.
Okay, that's
Why
great.
not? Why doesn't he see you as you? Let's take the working theory even deeper to its core.
It's just because it's also me too. I shy away. I withdraw. Maybe sometimes I don't want to be expressive about it because I think it's also stemming from like the past and that his addiction was like kind of more important at the time. And that whenever I felt like I could say something, it wasn't really,
I think it's enough that I think it's very good that you've identified that my working theory, he doesn't see me, he sees a client.
Yeah.
Okay, that's great.
Yeah. And in what you just said, there's a working theory that dates back years. You just said my dad's addiction was more important to him than me.
That's what it felt like.
That's what it felt like. Yeah. And it would be understandable if you emerged from that with a working theory, something like, I'm not important to him. I don't matter to him, really.
Yeah.
Not really. Not when the chips are down.
Yeah.
Not when there's a drug to do or a behavior to indulge.
Yeah.
And just to tell you, when I was in my addictions, and I was never any kind of a substance addict, it was just behavior. When I say just behavior, it was behavior. If you had asked me at any time, what's the most important value to you? I would have said it would have been the happiness and well-being of my family and my children. That's if you had asked me. And I would have been completely sincere and honest about it. I would have meant it. But if you look at my life and how I lived it, and if you asked, what's the most important thing to this guy? You would have said, his compulsions.
Feeling good.
Feeling good, feeling worthy, feeling important, whatever, so that when it comes to what our real values are, don't ask yourself what your values are, because you're always going to come up with something very nice, which you actually mean. It's sincere.
Look at what you actually value and place value in.
But if you actually look at what you put value in, look at how you behave, you know. And I mean, you know, so that, and so many kids have that experience, you know. And I'm sure you did. Certainly Daniel did.
And you've already identified that one of the ways you cope with the working theory that my dad, I'm just really not that important to him. Never was, never will be. I'm extrapolating here, but you tell me if I lose the thread.
I mean, during that time for sure. I mean, now it's like, it seems like he's just like trying so hard now to like try to find that again, or find a relationship. And it's kind of, you know, it's like, I just wish it would, like, I feel like I can be open with him, but it's like, I'll need you to talk to me like I'm your son.
Great.
You know, that's what I need, you know?
Yeah, right.
Tell me about how you went through your life when you were my age. Just tell me how it is.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Not how are you doing? How are you okay?
Yeah.
How are you feeling? It's like always about me, you know? I'm the broken project, right? He's the complete work.
Yeah.
And I'm some broken piece that he has to fix.
Beautiful. Crystal clear expression of both the experience and kind of the working theory. And your way of dealing with that. See, what you just expressed, some anger came into your face. I don't know if you felt it.
No, I felt it.
You felt it, the little sharpness, a little fire. It's great to see.
Yeah.
Your habitual way of dealing with and coping with this working theory is just withdrawing, just kind of turtling, just kind of being, so he can't reach you anyway. You can't fire me, I quit. You can't hurt me, I'm already turtled.
Yeah. It seems like that's where I'm at most peace, when I'm by myself, and just not let it just kind of, if it gets too, it seems like just letting it go for a few days or whatever, it seems like go back to ground zero.
Yeah, well, most peace is
Yeah.
doing a lot of work for you in that sentence,
Yeah.
because that's not saying much. What you're at is tranquility, equilibrium,
Yeah.
a kind of tenuous safety, but not a feeling of the peace that would come with being seen, showing yourself, and actually the peace that comes when you let your fire out a little bit,
Yeah.
when all of you wakes up.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for demonstrating
Yeah.
that.
Of course.
Thank you.